Hello, my name is Teacher Tina and I teach for VIPKID. I also coach new candidates through the hiring process. Today, let's discuss TPR. We will be talking about what exactly TPR is, how TPR online is a little bit different from in a traditional classroom, and I'll be showing you some examples of using TPR in your classroom. So, let's get started. First of all, what is TPR? TPR is total physical response. And what that means for you is basically how do you get your students moving so that they can understand the language and use it? Okay, so it's making that body-mind connection. So TPR was developed by a man named Dr. James Asher. And Asher was actually a professor of psychology, and he was given federal funding for over 20 years to develop this method and to investigate his hypotheses about language learning. Long story short, if you have ever studied TPR like in college like I did, then you probably have seen videos of TPR, and it looks something like this. You will see a teacher standing up in the classroom, and all of the students are around the teacher. The teacher gives a command, and the students all do a physical response. This is kind of the early stage of learning vocabulary and new sentence structures. So for example, the teacher might, the first time introducing something, might say, I touch my head. Touch your head. And the students touch their heads. So eventually, they would understand what that command means without the teacher even having to do the physical activity. And then eventually the student would be able to speak those sentences and would understand kind of passively the grammatical structures that were going on there. Long story short, it's a little bit different in the online classroom, right? So I think that TPR online is a little bit different mainly because of three reasons, and I'm going to go over them real quick with you. So the main reasons that I think TPR is different online is because of space. Okay, so total physical response. If you are in a physical classroom, it would be the teacher is standing up, moving around all over the place, and the students are doing the same thing if they're able, of course. But online, this is all we've got. Right? We are basically a shoulder, heads, arms, that's about it. And likewise, the student probably has a pretty small window, and we want to be able to see the student's mouth too. So we don't even want the student trying to be too far away. So we kind of need to adapt TPR so that it fits in our screen a little more. So our TPR would look a little more, a little more up here. So for example, what is your name? Right? It's all in this space. So that's kind of one thing is the space, right? We have limited space when we're teaching online. We have limited time, right? If you are teaching ESL in a classroom, you probably are seeing that student every single day, and it's easy to build on that knowledge, and you can kind of toss it around, and you don't really expect the student to be speaking right away. But we have pretty limited time with our students online, right? So for VIPKID, our lessons are 25 minutes long. If we want the student to be grasping new content, we need to make sure that student is not just listening, but is also speaking with us in that time, right? Not just listening, not just doing the physical activity, but also speaking. That's so important, especially online, and it keeps them engaged even more than just doing the physical activities. So the other way that online is a little bit different for TPR is the number of students. So remember that visual that I was just painting for you of the teacher standing in the middle of the room with all of her students or his students around? Yeah, you are one-on-one with your student, at least with VIPKID, and that is a beautiful thing. So another thing that Asher really focused on was the fact that for language development to be successful, the student needed to feel low stress. So I think online is a great platform for learning a language, especially one-on-one, because the students aren't worried about what their classmate is thinking about how silly they look or how they maybe aren't pronouncing it quite right yet, right? There's just a lower judgment zone there. So I think it's really optimal for doing TPR, but maybe we shouldn't call it TPR because it's a little bit different. Anyway, I will be referring to it as TPR. I digress. I bet you are ready for some examples. So, example time. Example time. So, there are 3 different types of examples that I'm going to be showing to you. And the one you've probably seen, if you've looked up any other videos, you've probably seen these before. The mouth point and the ear cup is what I call them. So the mouth point is like this. If I want you to repeat, this is what I'm doing. And then when I want you to actually say it back, I cut my ear. Right? So I think a common misconception, and I see this when I Skype my candidates, is that you're supposed to do this every single time that you're talking. But really, I would suggest reserving this for when you want the student to repeat. Because right now, the student doesn't know, oh, am I supposed to be repeating that when she does this? Right? So, for example, if I'm talking with my student and then all of a sudden I do this, I see a dog. Right? The student's like, oh, wow, she is pointing to her mouth. I had better pay attention. Right? So you don't really need to be doing this all the time. You don't need to be doing this when you're saying, how are you? Right? Because your student might say back, how are you? You just don't need it. This is for, hey, pay attention, and you can even get closer to the camera. I suggest doing so. So get up close and then stay up close. And you really want to make eye contact with that camera as well, because this is a lot less powerful if I'm doing this. Right? The student doesn't feel like I'm actually paying attention. So you need to be looking at the camera when you're listening for a response. So I just call these, whoop, where is it? Here it is. The mouth point and ear cup. Mouth point and ear cup. All right. The second thing that I am going to teach you for an example is commands and corrections. So commands, for example, of course we want to model things for our students, but if it's something the student should already know anyway, then we can model with TPR. For example, circle the dog. Circle the dog. Ooh. Right? This is the TPR I use for when I'm trying to watch for what my student is doing. So they know if I just told them to do something and then I go like this, they better figure out what they're doing. So yes, you can use it for circle, for draw a line. There are lots of ways that you can do it for stand up, sit down. Lots of great commands that you can use. And then for the corrections, this is a really great tip that I got during my mock class when I was interviewing. Count it out, right? This is kind of like TPR. It's a form of TPR to count out your words if you want a full sentence or if you want to make a correction. So let's say that your student just said, I see apple, right? I can go, I see an apple. Right? If the student doesn't really seem to know what that means, throw in some TPR. I see an apple. I see. Right? So it's super helpful for you to count it out. Now, you can also do a sliding motion to expand the sentence, right? If the student just answers with one word, like if you want them to say, my name is Sally, and they just say, you say, what is your name? Sally. My name is Sally. Good. Right? So that's a really powerful tool because they know exactly how many words they're going to. They saw you hold up 4 fingers and now they're 2 fingers in and they know, oh, okay, I'm not done with my sentence yet. So I think this is even more powerful than using a sliding scale because a sliding scale, I don't know when that stops. Is it still going? Is it still? Probably, yeah. So it can just be a little confusing, I think, to use a sliding scale. but you do what works for you. And the other thing that's really, really good, an example is new vocabulary. So it's really helpful if you introduce new vocabulary using TPR. So for example, let's say that you are introducing some snack foods, right? And of course they have the pictures on the screen, excuse me, the pictures on the screen, but you can also do TPR so they get used to it. So today I had one of my students, he was learning about snacks, and we came to the word popcorn, and he wasn't sure what that was. So I held my barrel of popcorn and I was doing that, popcorn, right? And something else this is just a fun little tip, I like to try to make the syllables match my TPR. That may be a little too much thinking, but I think it's helpful, and it doesn't take that much time to figure it out, popcorn, right? Or if I am teaching baseball, right? Baseball, basketball, right? Pretty easy. And your student is going to remember it, right? Because they're probably going to get in on it. This happens all the time. If you have a kinesthetic learner, they will probably start making up their own TPR even if you don't use it, but they will eat it up. They will love using TPR, and it will really help them to learn. So one last thought, think of TPR as the interpretive dance of your classroom. The only difference here is that the students don't yet understand the music. So you show them the dance, they do the dance with you, and then it clicks and they can interpret what you said. Help them to interpret your music. Thank you. I hope that you found this helpful. If you would like my help, my coaching, feel free to follow the steps below and subscribe for more videos. Thank you so much. Happy teaching. Goodbye.